Assalamu alaikum ji. I'm your instructor for History and Systems of Psychology. We have covered 6 lectures so far, and in that chunk we started from a few hundred years before Christ, and we brought you up to the 15th and the 16th century. In the last lecture, we talked about one great contributor to the history of psychology and philosophy, and that was who? Do you remember? That's right, René Descartes, who was a French philosopher-psychologist. And let us review, before we go forward, what he had to say. Let us take a look at the main contributions. As I told you in the last lecture, René Descartes is considered one of the very important contributors in the thought of the history of psychology. And why is he considered such an important person? Many reasons are there, but there are 2 important reasons for that significance that he holds in the literature of psychology today. Number 1, his doubt, his skepticism. He did not shy away from doubting. He did not run away from skepticism. शक करना उसके ख्याल में इतनी बुरी चीज़ नहीं है, बल्कि इसके ऑपोजिट डेकार्टे का ख्याल था कि शक जो है, अगर उसको उसके लॉजिकल कंक्लूजन तक पहुंचाया जाए तो शक हमारे लिए फर्म फाउंडेशन प्रोवाइड करता है. रिमेंबर दैट he continued to doubt everything. He was following the tradition of Socrates and Plato. Do you remember what Socrates and Plato had said about senses? That senses could deceive, that looking into would create knowledge and light. And that is what Descartes believed in, that senses could be deceptive, could deceive you. So one should doubt. So he continued to doubt. I gave you the examples of his doubt. This table is not there. I can doubt it. I can doubt that the cars, traffic that I see on the roadside is not there. That the TV screen that you're watching, that is not there. But you can't doubt, I cannot doubt one thing, and that is the doubt itself. That I am doubting. This thought that I am doubting is a sound thought, is a reality. And that is where doubting or skepticism takes you if you follow it to its logical conclusion. Descartes said that doubt could provide a firm basis. Cogito ergo sum. जैसा आपने पिछली दफे जाना था, cogito means क्योंकि मैं सोचता हूँ, ergo therefore sum I exist. I think, therefore I exist. I cannot doubt that. So that is one important contribution of Descartes, that he taught us to follow doubt to its logical conclusion and come to the firm basis of cogito ergo sum. The other important contribution of Descartes, you would recall, is what? Yes, dualism. Dualism means that there is a soul and then there is a body. That the soul is superior, has its own operative laws. That the body is below the soul, lesser than the soul, inferior than the soul, but it has its own operative laws. We can discover the laws of the soul and we can discover the laws of the body. The soul follows its own laws, the body follows its own laws. Body is like a machine. जैसे मशीन के अपने असूल हैं, एक पंखा चलता है, आप स्विच दबाएंगे, उसमें इलेक्ट्रिसिटी करंट चलेगा और उसकी वजह से पंखा जो है वो चलेगा. इसी तरह से बॉडी के कुछ असूल हैं, कुछ मैकेनिज्म्स हैं. और आपको याद होगा, इसी रेफरेंस में हमने आपको एविसीना का रेफरेंस भी दिया था. He was another great healer, a philosopher and a psychologist who held similar views and who thought that the soul impacted the body such that the soul's power could make a body sick, and conversely, soul's power could make a body recover from sickness. तो ये जो बात है सोल और बॉडी का कनेक्शन, ये इतनी कोई अजीब बात नहीं थी, except that Descartes had separated the soul from the body. But then he went on and connected it too. And that was through what he considered the pineal gland, that the soul is connected with the body. Remember that too? So these are the two main contributions, और भी हैं, but these are the two main contributions that Descartes is remembered for. Now we will go forward and take a look at some of the British schools. अब ये school क्या चीज़ है? Later historians, when they were talking about the development of psychology, selected people in the history in the past who had similar ideas and put those contributors together. And today, when we put those contributors together, we call them a school. जैसे हम उर्दू में मकतबा फ़िक्र कहते हैं, इसी तरह से इंग्लिश में हम हिस्ट्री ऑफ साइकोलॉजी के रेफरेंस में उन लोगों को जिनके ख्यालात एक से थे, उनको एक स्कूल कहते हैं. We will now look at some of the British contributions in the development of the history of psychology. Those contributions or contributors are known as associationists. Associationists, I'll tell you why, but you will understand later exactly why we gave that name of associationists to these people. Because they floated similar ideas of how thoughts or ideas become associated with each other. They may not be existing in the same time period. At the same time, they may be a little ahead or backward from each other, but the nature of their thoughts were such that they discovered the laws of how ideas become connected with each other. And that is why by we I mean later psychologists, later students of psychology, later history writers of psychology have grouped those people who had similar ideas together, and we call them associationists. Let me refresh your memory on this one. Let us go back a little in time and let us refresh your memory regarding Aristotle. Do you remember Aristotle's contribution about association of ideas? Jog your memory, think about it. Yes, you're right. Aristotle had also said that ideas become associated because of three things: similarity, contiguity, and contrast. Absolutely right. Ideas, Aristotle had taught us, can be connected together, can be seen to be woven in a web. एक ताने बाने की तरह से बन सकते हैं वो, और वो उस ताने बाने में या मकड़ी के जाले की तरह से कैसे बन सकते हैं? By those three laws that he had enumerated: the law of similarity, the law of contiguity, and the law of contrast. These are the three things that help to connect ideas. The modern, relatively modern associationists, the associationists that we are talking about today, reflect the same ideas. So in this limited sense, they reflect the Aristotelian tradition. I want you to see the importance of Aristotle's ideas. He had said it a few centuries before Christ, and here we are in the 15th and the 16th century and the 17th century, important contributors saying the same thing. In a gap of, let us say, 15, 16, 1800 years. That is just to bring home the greatness of the thinker Aristotle to you. आपको connection ये दिख गया होगा. So associationists were basically British psychologists whose main contribution in the history of development of psychology was to enlighten us on how ideas become associated with each other. One of the most important names in this regard is a philosopher psychologist, and his name, as you can see, is Thomas Hobbes. एक बात मैं यहाँ पॉइंट करना चाहूँगा इससे पहले कि हम आगे चलें. आपको दिखाई दे रहा होगा that the spellings of the name Thomas written as Thomas. Please don't call it Thomas. It is Thomas, written as Thomas, pronounced as Thomas with a T. So don't commit that mistake of making the T soft. The T is hard. It's Thomas Hobbes. Let us now take a look at contributions of Thomas Hobbes. He was born in 1588 and he died in 1679. One of the most important British contributors, who is considered a materialist thinker. And what is a materialist thinker? A materialist thinker is somebody who puts forward the view that man, animals, birds, trees, in fact, everything in the universe is made up of matter. It's solid. There is nothing magical about it. That the entire universe consists of different forms of matter. And he believed that so is man, so are animals. And the laws that govern matter also govern animals and human beings. The only difference is that animals are lower forms of matter and man is a higher form of matter. That matter expresses itself in simple ways in animals, and the matter expresses itself मादा का ज़हूर जो है वो इंसानों में कॉम्प्लिकेटेड शक्ल में है, जानवरों में सिंपल शक्ल में है. अब अगर इस तरह से हम जानवरों को और इंसान को देखें کہ وہ مادہ کی مختلف اقسام ہیں, مادہ کے مختلف مظاہر ہیں, تو بات آسان ہو جائے گی کہ ہمیں ان کو سمجھنے میں, پڑھنے میں, کنٹرول کرنے میں اور ان کے بیہیویئر کی پیش گوئی کرنے میں آسانی ہو جائے گی. اور یہی ٹامس ہابس کی کنٹریبیوشن ہے. He is considered a materialist. He put forward the view that man and animal are various forms of matter, and that their functions and their operations can be easily studied, understood, and explained. As a machine behaves, so does a man. All right? Why do we cry? How can you explain that? Why do we laugh? How can you explain that? We laugh because there is a cause, and if we discover that cause, we know why you are laughing. You cry because there is a cause, and if we discover that cause, we know why you are crying. And if we can exercise control over those causes, then we are able to exercise control over someone's crying and laughing. So human beings could be termed, could be explained in terms of human machines. This materialist idea that man and animals are made up of matter, and the matter's behavior can be understood and predicted, and that humans and animals are simple and complex machines, this idea is called mechanical materialism. A materialism which is mechanical in nature. He also put forward the view that our emotions, our sentiments, our feelings are caused by external stimuli. Now here is a mechanical explanation of this complex human expression of experiencing and feeling of emotions, experience and feeling of emotion and sentiments. Let us take a look at it. Can anger be explained, which is a human emotion or a human experience? Of course it can be explained. Can it be explained in terms of external stimuli? Of course it can be explained in terms of external stimuli. What happens outside me? If a dog is barking without a reason, if somebody is staring at me when I'm just minding my own business, and if I feel angry as a result of that, well, here you are, an explanation of the emotion of anger. An explanation of the emotion of fear can also be done in a similar manner. In fact, Thomas Hobbes believed that practically all human emotions are caused by external stimuli, and we can explain those in terms of external stimuli. اس کا مقصد کیا ہے؟ اس کا مقصد یہ ہے that there is no mystery. What is Thomas Hobbes saying? That there is no mystery in emotions and feelings. Emotions and feelings are to be explained as mechanical acts. We know they are a bit complex, but at the time of Thomas Hobbes, they were mysterious. They were considered mysterious. People thought that some mysterious forces caused those. But when Hobbes introduced his concept of mechanical materialism, he separated that mystery. He resolved that mystery. He got rid of that mystery that philosophers and psychologists unnecessarily attach to certain human acts, such as and emotions. That is a contribution worth its while. Another contribution of Thomas Hobbes is that ideas get connected with each other, that thoughts get connected with each other. Abhi usko bhi dekhenge how they get connected. But remember, we are talking about an associationist. An associationist, by definition, is a person who puts forward the view that ideas get connected. So here is Thomas Hobbes saying ideas and thoughts get connected. And how do they get connected? First, we acquire ideas by our sense organs. Look at it from the point of view of your previous knowledge. How did Aristotle say knowledge is acquired? Do you remember? Aristotle had said knowledge is acquired by observation, empiricism, देखने से, जांचने से. यही टॉमस हॉब्स भी कह रहा है. जैसे मैंने आपसे पहले कहा कि हॉब्स इज फॉलोइंग the Aristotelian tradition. So he is following the Aristotelian tradition in this context also, that ideas get connected and that we gather information by our senses, by our sense organs. And then, how do these ideas get connected? याद कीजिए, मैंने अभी एरिस्टोटल के बारे में आपको बताया था. He had said 3 things are responsible for those ideas getting connected. What are those 3 things? 1, similarity. 2, contiguity. 3, contrast. That's Aristotle speaking. And what does Hobbes say? Ideas get connected because of 3 things. And what are those 3 things? Number 1, habit. Habit is a main engine that connects ideas together, that creates the link between ideas. 2, wishes, desires, needs, something that comes out from the body. That is another source, that is another reason, another variable, another factor that leads to linkages of ideas. Ideas become connected with each other because of wishes. I wish such and such would happen, and whenever I see such and such, I'm reminded of my wishes. My wishes create my ideas, link my ideas together. And third, repetition. Those ideas, thoughts, acts that are lived again and again, repeated again and again, they become connected in your mind. जरा देखिए कि इन आइडियाज़ को आप अपनी पढ़ाई के लिए कैसे इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं. अगर आप अपनी पढ़ाई के रेजिमेंट को एक दस्तूर, हैबिट बना लें, तो आप पढ़ाई अच्छी तरह से कर सकेंगे. आइडियाज विल रिमेन कनेक्टेड. अगर आप में अपने आप में पढ़ाई की ख्वाहिश पैदा करें, तो आपकी आइडियाज रिलेटेड टू स्टडीज एंड योर कोर्सेज वुड बिकम कनेक्टेड. और तीसरी चीज, अगर आप जो कुछ आपने मवाद पढ़ा है उसको जहन में बार बार दोहराएं, रिपीट करें, तो वो आपके आइडियाज कनेक्ट हो जाएंगे. वो आपकी ज़िंदगी का, आपके जहन का, आपकी सोच का, आपकी मेमोरी का, आपकी याददाश्त का हिस्सा बन जाएंगे. अजीम लोगों की अजमत की एक वजह यह भी है कि वो हमें रास्ता दिखाते हैं अपनी ज़िंदगी को सहल, आसान, बेहतर बनाने की. तो इस लिमिटेड सेंस में, जैसे मैंने अभी आपको मिसाल दी, we can also consider Thomas Hobbes' ideas beneficial from a student's point of view for getting a good grade in your exam. Because of these ideas, Thomas Hobbes is called an associationist, and he is one of the foremost, the earliest associationist in the British school. चलिए इससे आगे बढ़ते हैं, एक और फिलोसफर का मुताला करते हैं, and that is the other great associationist philosopher, psychologist by the name of John Locke. As you can see on your screen behind me, notice please the spelling of the word Locke, L-O-C-K-E. It's written as Locke or Locke, but it's not pronounced as Locke or Locke. The E at the end is silent. So it's John Locke. Let us take a look at what he had to say. John Locke is an important associationist. He was born in 1632 and he died in 1704. Now, John Locke is a very, very important contributor because he totally rejected the idea that thoughts or ideas can be inborn. John Locke का ये ख्याल था कि हमारे ज़हन जो हैं उनमें हम कोई भी चीज़ लेके पैदा नहीं होते, कोई भी आइडिया हमारे ज़हन में पहले से मौजूद नहीं होता. Let us reflect a little here. Let us go back a little in time a little. Do you recall what Plato had to say? Do you recall what Socrates had to say? Yes. Their point of view was that knowledge is in there, in the mind. All that you have to do is to look in, and you would be able to discover knowledge. You would be able to find it. This is completely rejected out of hand by John Locke. John Locke is a follower of Aristotelian tradition. And remember what is the Aristotelian tradition? That information, knowledge, ideas can be gathered by observation. That ideas don't reside in you, that they can be gathered, and the main source of gathering of ideas or knowledge is your sense organ. Can you remember? Can you name some sense organs? That's true. Nose, ear, eyes, or sense of taste, or sense of touch. These are your sense organs. These are your senses. So Aristotle had said that ideas or information can be collected by these sources. And that is what Locke is also saying. Locke is saying that there is no such thing as innate ideas. He goes even further and postulates the concept of tabula rasa, T-A-B-U-L-A, tabula rasa, R-A-S-A, that your mind at the time of your birth, that a child's mind, when he is born, is like a clean slate. There is nothing written on the mind at the time of one's birth. It's a clean slate. And then experience and environment write on that. So here we are in late 16th and 17th century and 18th century, these philosophers proclaiming a part of psychology that we now know. If you remember the controversy of nature versus nurture, the controversy is that some researchers, psychologists put forward the view that we inherit a lot of tendencies, we inherit a lot of potential, that nature determines all of those that we inherit. And then there is a group of psychologists who put forward the view that we don't inherit anything, that whatever we are or whatever we become, it is the environment. The kind of environment that you get, that is the force that makes you into the kind of person that you are. जब हम बिहेवियरिज्म की बात करेंगे अभी 2-4 लेक्चर्स के बाद, तो इसकी एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म भी हम आपकी गोश गुजार करेंगे. Some psychologists had said, give me a child and let me control his environment and I will make a king or a thief out of him. कोई भी बच्चा मुझे दे दीजिए, ये माहिर नफ्सियात कह रहे हैं, और मुझे उसकी एनवायरनमेंट कंट्रोल करने दीजिए, मुझे उसके माहौल पे, हालात पे कंट्रोल करने दीजिए, और मैं चाहूँगा तो वो चोर बन जाएगा, और अगर मैं चाहूँगा तो वो शहजादा या बादशाह बन जाएगा. ये उस दूसरे ग्रुप वालों का एक क्लेम है. Psychologists who believe in nurture. Now, Locke does not take that extreme position, but he is saying the same thing, that you do not inherit anything, that whatever you become, it is because the environment writes on the clean slate. Remember tabula rasa? It is the environment, the experience that one goes through that writes on that clean slate, the tabula rasa. Okay, how does this writing go on? How does this writing take place? How do we become, in Lockean view or Locke's view, what we are? That there are two ways in which we learn. What are those two ways? Number one, sensation. We receive sensations. We receive stimuli. आपको मेरी आवाज़ आप तक पहुंच रही है, आपको मेरी तस्वीर दिखाई दे रही है, आप मेरे जुमले और फिक्रे सुन रहे हैं, और जुमले और फिक्रों को आपस में कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं. ये सब की सब चीज़ें जो हैं, ये जो आप तक स्टिमुलाई पहुंच रहे हैं, दीज आर द सेंसेशंस. आवाज़ के ज़रिए, तस्वीर के ज़रिए आप सीख रहे हैं. You are becoming by sensation. That's the way to learn. That's one way that Locke said we learn. What is the other way? Reflection. Whatever is written, whatever we receive, whatever sensations we get, we reflect upon those sensations. क्या ऐसा है? आप तक जो मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है और अब तक जो मैंने आपसे गुजारिशात की हैं, वो तो हैं सेंसेशंस, और फिर आप उनके बारे में रिफ्लेक्ट कर रहे हैं, सोच रहे हैं, क्या ये दुरुस्त है? क्या किसका किसके साथ कनेक्शन है? क्या मेरी ज़िंदगी में मेरे भी यही मुशाहिदात हैं? क्या मुझे वालिदैन ने भी ऐसा ही बताया है? क्या डिफरेंट अदर सोर्सेज से भी मुझे यही इंफॉर्मेशन मिल रही है? All of these are reflections. So one thing is sensation, that is responsible for learning in Locke's view, and the other thing is reflection. एक बात जो मैं इससे मुतल्लिक कहना चाहता हूं, वो भी काबिल गौर है. लॉक कह रहा है that we learn by sensation and reflection. There are many, many people, perhaps hundreds of people, perhaps thousands of people who are listening to what I'm saying now. Isn't that right? They are receiving the same sensations. ज़रा इस आर्गुमेंट के साथ चलिए, और ये आपको गहरा नुक्ता है जो लॉक ने समझाया है, इसीलिए मैं इसको स्ट्रेस करना चाहता हूं. There are so many people out there who are listening to what I'm talking about. In other words, they are receiving the same sensations. वही अल्फाज, वही तस्वीर, वही जुमले आप सब तक पहुंच रहे हैं. लेकिन उनमें आप में से कुछ लोग किसी और तरह से इसको समझेंगे और कुछ इसको किसी और तरह से समझेंगे. Why is that? Because the way we reflect on the sensations that we receive, that way differs. That is different from one person to another person. So our learning, our knowledge takes place as a function of, as a result of sensation and reflection, according to Lockean point of view. But even when two people or more than two people receive the same sensation, their reflection in Lockean terms may be different. Therefore, their learning may be different. जो आप एक टीचर से सुनते हैं, वो सारी क्लास वही चीजें सुन रही है, लेकिन कुछ लोग उससे कुछ नतीजा अख्ज़ करते हैं, किसी और तरह से देखते हैं, और कुछ और लोग उसको किसी और तरह से देखते हैं और कोई और नतीजा अख्ज़ करते हैं. ये बड़ी गौर तलब बात है कि आपकी रिफ्लेक्शन टू योर सेंसेशन is most important in creating knowledge. And that is Locke's contribution. The other important contribution, that is, sensations are the vehicles, are the stimuli, are the reasons, are the causes of ideas. How do these ideas become connected? These ideas become connected because of reflection and reasoning. So what are we talking about? We are talking about another great associationist. Who are associationists? Who try to discover how ideas become connected with each other. And of course, the greatest of the associationists was Aristotle, because he had given us the point of view that ideas become associated because of those three factors. Now, these two associationists, the British associationists that we are talking about, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, belong in the same Aristotelian tradition. And John Locke puts forward the view that although sensations are responsible for the creation of ideas, reflection and reasoning connects these ideas together. For a person or a group or a society to move forward, it is most important from the point of view of Locke, that they gather knowledge and reflect upon that knowledge so that ideas become associated. Knowledge, in Locke's point of view, can be gathered by sensations, by observation, but then knowledge can be built by reflection and by reasoning and by connecting these ideas that we collect by observation. And that is the important contribution. These were the two associationists that we were talking about. Before I wrap up today. Let us take a look at some of the main contributions of these two that we talked about. And these two great thinkers belong to England. The first of these was Thomas Hobbes. Please do not call him Thomas. It's hard T. Thomas Hobbes. Associationism is how ideas get associated, how ideas get connected. And one of the main contributors in this regard is Thomas Hobbes. What did he say? One, remember that he was a materialist and a mechanical materialist. Do you remember who is a materialist? Do you remember who is a mechanical materialist? Well, think about it. A materialist is somebody who believes that that's true, who believes that matter, that the universe is an expression of matter, that man and animals and all that we see in the universe are different expressions of matter. And he is considered a materialist because Hobbes put forward the view that whatever we see in the outside world is an expression of matter. The other contribution that we need to look at in case of Thomas Hobbes is that the laws that govern the matter, that govern the machines, are also the laws that govern human behavior or human thoughts. That animals are lower forms of matter and human beings are higher forms of matter. That for us to understand animal psychology or animal behavior, we need simplistic terminology or simplistic tools. In order for us to understand human expression and human psychology, we need a slightly more complex terminology and a slightly more complex system of ideas or system of operations. Animals and humans are machines. To hold this view is, remember, mechanical materialism. Mechanical materialism is to regard universe as an expression of matter and to consider matter like a machine. That is Hobbes's point of view. And the core thing that Hobbes says, and which is more closely related to psychology, is that ideas become associated. And how do ideas become associated? He enumerated 3 sources of those associations. 1, habit. 2, wishes. And 3, repetition. We learn to associate ideas with each other because we are habituated. We associate ideas with each other because we wish that those ideas might become associated. And we associate ideas with each other because we repeat. Repetition, tawatir, is another source of association of ideas. That is what Hobbes had said. Remember, Hobbes is not very far off from what Aristotle had said earlier, that ideas become associated. The other great thinker in this regard that we talked about is, if you remember, yes, John Locke. And John Locke is somebody who is associated with the term, I'm waiting for you, with the term tabula rasa, clean slate. Remember, he rejected, totally rejected, out of hand, that human beings inherit ideas. He said, what? That we do not inherit ideas. That nothing is in our minds. Who had said earlier that knowledge can be gathered by looking inwards? Can you remember? Yes, the great Greek philosophers of the earlier ancient times. Who are those great Greek philosophers? 1, Socrates. 2, Plato. These two, and you remember also, Socrates was a teacher of Plato. And you also remember that Socrates believed very firmly in his ideas, such that he was prepared to drink poison to defend his ideas. And Plato followed his tradition. And the third in the line that we talked about was, if you remember, who? That's true, Aristotle. Aristotle was of the view that ideas, information, knowledge is gathered by the use of our senses. The Aristotelian tradition is that ideas, information, knowledge comes about as a function of sensations, observation, and then association of ideas. Ideas get associated. Now, the two associationists that we are talking about, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, did not belong to the Platonian or Socratic tradition. They belong to the, that's true, Aristotelian tradition. Particularly when we are talking about John Locke and his concept of tabula rasa, what are we talking about? We are talking about mind being a clean slate, and our experience, our sensations, and our reflections write on that clean slate. अभी मैंने आपको इसकी extreme example भी दी थी, that one of the relatively recent psychologists had said, give me a child and let me control his environment, and I can make a king or a thief out of him. Any child. What does it mean? That child's mind is like a clean slate. There is nothing on it. And if you let me control the environment, let me control what gets written on his mind, then I can make him a thief or a king. This is the ultimate expression of what Locke was saying. Locke was saying that mind is like a clean slate, and that your experience writes on it, your sensation writes on it, your reflection writes on it. ये दो बातें जो हैं, tabula rasa और sensation and reflection, ये दो बातें निहायत अहम हैं लॉक के ख्याल में in the psychology and in the development of human beings. That is the end of today's lecture. we talked about associationists. We'll talk about some more associationists. And then from Britain, we will go into France. And then from France, we will go into Germany. And from Germany, we will go into Russia. And we will talk about the French contribution, the German contribution, and the Russian contribution. Interesting, isn't it? Once we've covered this Europe, then we will go into other continents. But for the time being, let us just see and stay with the British associationists. Do look up your lecture for today. Do look up the lectures that we have been talking about in the past. Find those connections. And remember, Locke had said, reflection is a way of learning, gathering knowledge. So reflect upon all the things that you have learned. We will take up some more interesting things, some more interesting contributions in the next lecture. Until then, Khuda Hafiz, God be with you. Assalamu alaikum ji. We are into history and systems of psychology, and we are ready to go into Germany. We had been in England and in France and we had taken a look at some of the British contributions, and then we took a look at some of the French contributions